Tracy Gilbert, welcome.
Hi, Mike.
You were recently in the West Bank and at the Gaza border, and you saw the occupation with your own eyes. I've remained in regular contact with my colleague, Gaza journalist Sammy Abu Salim, and last week I asked him for his message to the people of Edinburgh. And this is exactly what he said. My message is I discovered that the first homeland is the stomach. We are hungry. Please put pressure on Israel to let us eat, to stop targeting families and let us live normally. Stop genocide. Silence encourages genocide. How can you reply to Sammy Abu Salim?
It's so very difficult, and Sammy and many families will be feeling and suffering the same hunger, pain, fear. For anyone who's watching what's happening in Parliament, it's a discussion that happens most days. The government are trying very hard to try and find a way to get aid in. The ministers are working tirelessly behind the scenes to try and persuade the Israeli government to enable them to be able to deliver food and get the aid in the current situation where people are being killed trying to get food that the Palestinian government, the Israeli government are trying to provide, as they say. It's very high risk, and it's high risk for everyone involved. And it's just an awful situation.
But I mean, it's very interesting that you focus straight on the question of aid, because only yesterday the extremist minister in Netanyahu's government, Bezalel Smotrich, threatened Netanyahu that he would resign unless Netanyahu stopped all aid supplies reaching northern Gaza. Now, that really hits home, because that's where Sammy and his family are sheltering. So what precisely can you do, or rather the government do right now, to protect Sammy and his family from starvation?
Yeah, it's very difficult, and the government, the UK government, are working very hard with partners across Europe and trying to work with America to try and put pressure on the Israeli government to see sense. We are asking, as MPs, we are asking for further sanctions and trying to put that pressure on the Israeli government to do not only the right thing, but the humanitarian thing. But it's a right-wing government that aren't listening, as we know, and that is very, very difficult to turn words from politicians into action on the ground. And it's about focusing on outcomes, but it's very, very difficult to get those outcomes when you have a government that don't want to listen.
Okay, let's talk about words, because in response to this latest closure of a lifeline of aid, the Spanish Prime Minister has said this is a genocide. Now, that's not something that you would hear from the mouths of any British minister, but I want to ask you, is it a genocide? And before you even answer, can I just say that I'm a Jew, I'm a British Jew, and my mother's entire family were killed in the Holocaust. And what I see, I know, is a genocide. What do you say?
It's awful to watch everything unfold that's unfolding. Language is very important, and I understand it's very important, but it is also, for me, the most important thing is outcomes. And I am focused on delivering outcomes rather than delivering words. So I understand that it's for the courts to decide what is or isn't genocide. As a human being and as someone who is passionate about this issue, and as a trade unionist who's campaigned on this issue for decades, long before I was an MP, I don't think words are particularly helpful, although language is important. I want to focus on solutions, and the solutions are around pressure and trying to activate the government to get the support it needs from other governments to deliver an outcome of peace.
Again, you anticipate my next question, precisely about outcomes, because after your recent visit to Israel and Palestine, you wrote to the Prime Minister and you called for 4 actions on Israel. And it's actually worth listing exactly what you called for, to suspend UK-Israeli trade talks until a ceasefire is in place, to suspend all current arms licenses to Israel, to place sanctions on Israeli politicians who support military action in Gaza, and to enforce a strict anti-settlement policy across government to ensure that settlers are sanctioned and illegal settlement goods are banned from the UK. That is a powerful list of demands. What has been the response?
Well, I think it's really difficult because words need to turn into actions, and actions are the thing that isn't happening right now. Clearly behind the scene there's negotiations that I'm not privy to, but I am reassured that the Minister for the Middle East is working very hard on trying to ensure that there's no bombs and bullets being used, that there's no trade going on with illegal settlements, that we are looking at sanctions and that will continue to be reviewed, and that they are working tirelessly on the diplomatic discussions.
Are you happy with progress?
It's hard to know what progress looks like. If progress means we get a ceasefire soon, then yes. I'm also worried about the consequence of the UK standing alone and it not having any impact on what we then do. I think it's really important we can see how that coalition of the willing that worked with Ukraine can actually deliver some promising outcomes. We have peace again this week with Israel and Iran, and hopefully the focus gives us a window of opportunity to refocus on Gaza and the current situation, because we were heading towards that conference in the Middle East to discuss Gaza and looking at that two-state solution and how we can move forward on that, and then the focus changed because of Israel. So I think it's really important to not just be talking about things, but what we can actually do, and there's a balance behind the scenes between having those negotiations, but actually delivery is more important. So in some respects, I just care about the outcome. I don't really care so much about how we get there, but we need to have the ceasefire and enable aid in, and aid is a priority right now.
Here to that. Now, okay, I'm a long way from home here, and I'd like to bring this discussion right back here to Edinburgh and Leith. My own MP in Wales says that the crisis in Gaza is the top issue in his constituency casework. Is that also your experience here in Leith and North Edinburgh?
It's always been a huge issue here in Edinburgh and Leith. It's always been an issue for constituents, but beyond that, it's always been an issue that I've been passionate about as well. So I'm not surprised that it is such high up in people's agendas in terms of politically, because who can not be impacted by what we see on our tellies every day? It's horrific, and feeling so helpless. Previously as a bystander and now almost as a minister, to be able to deliver and save one Palestinian life is all our focus is on that, and it's about getting the tactics right. And I have to trust that the government understand that and that they're doing everything in the background to enable that to happen. And I get that that's frustrating and it doesn't happen. I mean, 6 months ago was too long ago, you know, and the crisis deepens and it gets worse and the tragedies continue to unfold. So I fully understand people's frustrations because I feel them too. You
feel them too, because one of the most high-profile frustrations is the whole question of the recognition of the state of Palestine. And the answer by not just the current government or previous government is when the time is right. Now, I was very struck by what you said on that very point in Parliament recently. Let me quote you. You said, "I now fear that if we do not recognise a Palestinian state, there will be no Palestinian state, that includes Gaza, left to recognise. Will the UK government take immediate steps to recognise the state of Palestine?" Immediate steps, that was what you said. Time is not on Palestine's side, is it?
No. A few weeks ago, prior to the Israel bombing Iran, there was that Middle East conference that was meant to be happening, and we were hopeful, we were all hopeful, the growing voices, not just in the Labour Party, but cross benches in Westminster. Recognition was very, very high on that agenda, and we were very much hoping that that conference would have been that moment in time, not just the UK, but with other countries as well, working together for it to be meaningful and not just performative, for it to create some change. And yeah, I'm very disappointed. Obviously, events overtook that conference taking place, but it felt like we were almost there at that time, and I was hopeful that that might have been the outcome from that.
You see, this business, you say working together, that is exactly, again, what my own constituency MP in Wales said when I interviewed him following the screening of the film back last September.
You're right, the organisation of this cooperation across many parties is key. I do think that it will get better.
Is it going to happen?
I think it will. And the reason I think it will is that already in the very short time that Parliament has actually sat since the election, you've seen very, very brave members of the Labour Party be very willing to break ranks. Now, not enough, I grant you, to defeat the government in a vote, but you are talking about dozens of Labour MPs, and that will be a problem for the government. It'll be a source of pressure that they will have to counter and address. And on such a matter as the injustice that's happening in Gaza and the West Bank, they will have to move positions, because there's no way of rectifying that wrong and that imbalance in their position.
Now, only this week, we've seen serious backbench opposition amongst your own colleagues in the Labour Party, changing government policy on disability benefit cuts. Over 120 Labour backbenchers rebelling. And yet, on Gaza and Palestine, there has been no trace of any such backbench movement or cross-party movement. Why not?
I don't agree with that. I think there has been quite a lot of shift. Certainly you can feel it in the chamber. There's a growing desire from all parts of the House to deliver a peaceful solution, and actually you're seeing the Tories breaking rank and coming out and asking for a Palestinian state and stuff that you would just never expect to be happening. So I don't agree that nothing's happening. Parliament is a very odd machine, and the benefits debate is very much on a bill and a bit of paper where you can hold the government to account. There is nothing that we can do as parliamentarians other than apply pressure to raise our concerns and our constituents' concerns. But ultimately, you have a government who wants what we are asking for. It's the Israeli government that don't want to listen. So even if every person wrote that on a bit of paper within Westminster, and I'm sure everyone would, it wouldn't necessarily change the outcome for one Palestinian person, because the UK government, whilst we always want them to be doing more and going further and faster, isn't the problem. It's the Israeli government that's the problem. And actually, what is important is trying to influence behind the scene America and other countries to try and coalesce to get the outcomes that we need for the Palestinian people.
A big challenge there.
Huge challenge.
Let's bring our discussion to a close on what might perhaps be a search for optimism in this situation. I think I don't know if you'll agree, but one of the most memorable things for me about Sammy Abu Salim's words in the film is his infectious optimism about coexistence. And he's speaking not from, La La Land, but from his own lived experience growing up in Palestine in the 80s and the 90s. But of course, I filmed him 10 days before the Hamas massacre and the Israeli siege of Gaza. And you have seen Palestine since then. So the question is this: are you optimistic? Can you find optimism about a future for coexistence between Israelis and Palestinians?
I absolutely can, and I think one of the memories that last for me, one of the most memorable things I came out of there feeling was hope. amongst all the devastation, we met. The trip I went on was with Yashad, which is a British Jewish organisation, and the amount of Israeli people, from victims who had been impacted by the massacre on the 7th of October, from hostage families, from Israeli people, from NGOs and people working for peace, young people working for peace, Israeli people and Palestinian people working together for peace, in spite of everything that they had faced. I was there in February, so it was just before the ceasefire broke down again. They are committed to a two-state solution, to living side by side. They understand the importance of each other and the coexistence of each other, because, in their words, what other option do we have?
Tracy Gilbert, thank you very much.
Thank you.